There's so much pressure to move out as soon as you turn 18 because of people like Brad Scales who make millions of dollars at a young age. And for the longest time, I felt like I really needed to move out just because of social media. But in reality, I wasn't financially or mentally ready to move out. I'm still 22 years old living in my mom's basement, and I'm not ashamed. By doing so, I'm able to save over 80% of my income, keep my expenses low, and save and invest. Luckily, I don't have any like family issues or anything crazy going on at home where I'm forced to move out, and I'm super grateful that my mom doesn't charge me any rent. But with that being said, the question is, what age should you move out? And I would say it kind of depends on your situation. If you live with an addict or have like insane family issues, obviously you might need to move out sooner than some other people. But if you can live with your parents rent free like me, take advantage of it while you can. Live below your means and save and invest. Living with your parents has become like a little bit more acceptable recently because of like inflation, terrible job market, high cost of living, all these different things. But it's become a little bit more normalized nowadays, which is both good and bad. A lot of people online will tell you to live with your parents as long as possible, but as a 22-year-old working full time with a girlfriend, I actually disagree. I hear stories all the time of people who are like 30 years old and they might have $1 million in their bank account because they live with their parents, but at what cost? It's going to be hard to date and build meaningful relationships while you still live with your parents. And I'm not going to lie, all the people I personally know who are still living with their parents at that age, they're kind of socially awkward. They don't really fit in with society, and they're kind of like a little bit, they might have a lot of money, but they're really behind in a lot of other aspects that I would argue is more important than money. And think about it, like you're not going to bring a girl back to your parents' crib. Despite having lots of money, a lot of these people just end up developing bad habits. Moving out is going to force you to grow up, and you never really notice how dependent you were until you actually move out. Little things like laundry detergent, seasonings, toilet paper, and groceries start to add up quick, and you gain a new sense of freedom that kind of helps you discover yourself and helps you gain independence. For most normal people, I think the age you should move out should be around roughly 25 years old. Of course, this depends on your financial situation. If you can't afford to pay rent, then you can't move out even if you want to. So I would recommend either moving in with your girlfriend or trying to find roommates so that you can make rent more affordable, especially if you live in like a high cost area. Like me personally, I live in Northern Virginia. Rent is extremely unaffordable by yourself. The cost of like a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment where I live is $2,100, not including utilities. And if I didn't have anyone to move in with, I would probably be living with my parents much longer and just stacking my bread. I personally plan on getting an apartment with my girlfriend at the beginning of next year, because I feel like if you're in a serious relationship and you kind of want to progress to the next point, it's important to move in together sooner rather than later so that you can kind of see how you guys operate living with each other. Plus, you're only going to have to pay half the rent, so it's going to be much cheaper than moving out on your own. And for me personally, I see moving out as like the next step to kind of growing my life and growing my finances. I have excellent credit. I make pretty good money for my age, and I've already had experiences making large monthly payments for my car. So like I've proven to myself that, I can handle a monthly payment, a monthly recurring payment. And financially, I feel like moving out will only force me to adjust my budget and motivate me to make more money since I'm going to be spending more. And I know that once I move out, I'm never going to want to move back in. So it will kind of be like a fire under my ass that will just help me scale my life and like my overall, goal to financial freedom and just being happy and, moving up in life. But yeah, guys, obviously this is kind of controversial. And I know a lot of people can't really move out. They can't afford to move out nowadays with everything. But I don't think you should be living with your parents in your 30s, especially if you plan on having a quote unquote normal lifestyle. If you plan on, dating, getting married, having kids, having a house, and raising a family, if that is your goal, and I know it's not for some people, but if that's your goal, the quote unquote American dream, then I do not think that you should be living with your parents as long as possible. I think you should move out around 25 years old and kind of, move on with your life, because you need to, after a certain point, you need to force yourself to like scale your life, because if you just stay where you're comfortable your whole life, you're not going to see much progress. But if you force yourself in an uncomfortable situation that you know ultimately is good for you, like ultimately good things are going to come out of moving out, it's just scary at first. If you put yourself in that situation, you will adapt and you will be able to make it work.